Show you too. All right, we're live, my love. Let's go.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Zacchaeus Speaks On. And tonight's topic is about effective SEL practices, where I am joined by national expert around the topic of social and emotional learning, the one and the only Corey Sanchez Smith. Corey, how are you, my love?
I am so happy to be here. You just make me so happy. So, yay, I'm good.
You make me so happy. As you see, I saw your hair in the photo, so I said, let me do something a little different here. Take the twist out so I can look like Corey. So, we're trying twinning them, right?
I mean,
twinning them. Me and you are twinning them, or trying to twin.
You should have told me to wear red.
You know what? But you look so killer in that black. It definitely would not. I in no way want to step on your style with that beautiful black artwork in the back as we prepare for another year of Black History and Black History 165. Corey, there's so much that I have to ask you. This is a huge topic. Many people out there wanting to know more about social and emotional learning. So thank you to all our viewers. And as you viewers watch, let us know who you are. Say hi to both of us. Engage, please. And so this is the thing, Corey. What is, for those people watching, because I was a lot of non-educators, what is social emotional learning? What is it?
Sure. So social emotional learning is I call it the heart work. So it is the commitment to support all people, students, teachers, adults, hi Candace, and parents as they develop the ability to know about themselves, to understand their emotions, to create goals, to work towards those goals in community with others, the ability to effectively communicate, to get along, to respect other people's opinion and perspective, to learn in this journey we call life. Basically, it is all the skills we need to be successful human beings. Uh-oh, Zach, you're muted.
Thanks. So look, I have a question for you. So number one, everything you laid out are exactly the things that we hope students gain from a strong, robust educational experience. Correct. Question number one is, why is it that all of a sudden social emotional learning has become a focal point in education?
So that's a very layered answer, and let me do my best to answer it. First, social emotional learning has been around for over 20 years, almost 30 years. It's not new. And if you were to talk to a preschool educator or a special education educator, they would say, this is old hat. We've been there, done that. So there are certain professions that have been committed to SEL for a long time. We had the nightmare of going through No Child Left Behind, which challenged us all to put academic content testing and just really ridiculous state standards at the forefront. And in doing that, we left behind the humanity of education. I think we learned a lot from going through that and realized this isn't working. We're not meeting students' needs, and there's a missing piece. And literally that missing piece became an awareness of SEL. So you have that kind of bubbling up from education taking a really deep dive into testing. On top of that, we have a pandemic, and we have students at home and parents saying, look, my little one needs to be with people. They need to socialize. They're not learning the skill. I can't teach them how to get along with others when it's just me and them and fighting over, Zoom. So there became an awareness of the importance of SEL, even more so when we had that forced virtual instruction. So there are a lot of reasons why it's at the forefront right now. And it's really us going back to what we want to do for students, right? Why we came into the profession for those of us who are educators, and what our heart calls for as parents, what we want for our kids.
I agree 100%. SEL has always been there, and great educators have always leveraged these tenets of SEL in their instruction, in their academics, to ensure that the whole child was developed through the educational experience. Yes. So I agree with you 100%. But one thing that I've noticed is that sometimes there is pushback among teachers around the rallying cry that we need SEL. Why do you think some teachers push back on the notion of we need SEL in our schools?
So a couple really, really good reasons. The first is we weren't taught in our teacher preparation programs. I know all about Piaget. I could write a full essay on Erickson's stages of development. And not one of my courses did I have any instruction on social emotional learning. So there is a lack of comfortability with the subject. So if I'm a teacher, and I can respond in a couple ways. Someone brings me something new, I could be excited about it and say, yes, let's learn. Or I can have a reaction that scares me and takes me back into my hole. And I say, no, I don't want it, put it away. So you have that. You have a generation or more of teachers that didn't have that exposure. That's number one. Number two, you have schools and districts that are saying, yes, do this, but they're not putting in the time, resources, energy, or space for it really to be done well. So it feels like one more thing. It feels like I went to school for this content area. You're giving me a box and maybe some expectations around what I'm supposed to do with this box, but I don't know what that looks like. And I don't have any more time in my day. So no, take this away. So those are two of the biggest reasons why I hear teachers will say, send this back. I'm done.
Yeah, and it's really easy. That's the part that is really, I think, the most difficult for me to accept is that effective classroom management that incorporates high quality relationships and helps kids foster the skills they need to be successful beyond the classroom. Really, take me rephrase, to be successful in the classroom is SEL at its best. It's something that good teachers have always done continuously. And the fact that, I think, as you said earlier, high stakes testing, ridiculous levels of accountability from nowhere, push so much of that out and cause a false sense of urgency that teachers felt the need to condense or even do away or delete the social skill building that happens in the classroom. Is why I think so many educators have now feel as though it's something else or something new or something added on top of what they already do, when it's really easy and it's just a part of teaching.
So I want to add that a lot of teachers, when I'm in front of them training or working with their schools, it is not uncommon for me to hear, I've been waiting for this, right? Like, thank you. And I've been trying to do this on my own, and I'm so glad now I have permission to prioritize my students' well-being. So there are thousands of or hundreds of thousands of teachers out there that know this is the work they want to do and they need space to do it. I am going to push back a little bit, Zach. I don't think it's easy because it takes extreme vulnerability. Like, for you to truly connect with another human being, you have to be open to being honest and being your true self in a classroom. And not every person is comfortable doing that. I'm not saying you have to be a therapist, but you need to be able to have honest conversations about how you feel about things, about mistakes that you've made, about goals that you have, about things that you wish were different. You need to open up. And that's hard for some people. It's really difficult.
I guess you're right. Yes. Is it hard for some people? Yes. But is it really hard for a lot of teachers? See, I don't know. I think you're right. It's hard for a lot of people, but I think it's like kind of an innate part of being a great teacher or being a teacher, right? Even a good teacher.
English teacher. You were an English
teacher. Right. But I've seen, this is something that I realized so early in my career, is that I don't believe that you need to be anything like me in order to be a great teacher. Everyone has their own personality. And there were teachers who were extremely, what's the right word? Because I'm trying to find the right words, right? Words that wouldn't have a negative connotation, like meek or mild, or, but that's just a personality style, right? Where you're maybe a little bit more introverted or really introverted, and you don't connect in the way that I may connect, but the way you connect is just as powerful. And kids absolutely gravitate to the authenticity of real, true humans. Whether you're extroverted or introverted, whether you're super loud like Zach Kirk or you're really quiet like Dr. Thompson, kids loved us both.
No, I agree. And I just want to like put this in context. You were an English teacher, which means that you spent your time examining characters' point of views, looking at motivation, understanding like relationships as part of your profession. Not everyone did that as a teacher. That's not part of everyone's, experience with content. And also, I'd like to add that we are forgetting a really important piece, and that is the culture of the school. So if I don't feel safe where I work, I don't feel safe to open up to anybody. There are a lot of people just surviving. They get out of their car, right? They're just like putting on their armor, like, let's go. Let me get into this building. Let me do what I got to do and try to survive till the bell rings again. And it honestly has to be, when you talk about social emotional learning, it has to be not just a classroom intervention or expectation. It has to be a school-wide approach to how we care for human beings. And if adults don't feel safe, the kids won't feel safe. It just doesn't work.
And literally, I mark the time because that is going to be the quote, right? Like, there's so many great, John Lee Dumas calls them value bombs on his podcast. And there's so many great value bombs dropped by these amazing educators like yourself, Corey, when I have these discussions that, like, I'm literally trying to call them and pull them. And again, teachers cannot be vulnerable if they do not feel safe.
Correct.
And that is the function and the purpose of school leadership. And that is the function of that school culture. And that is their work. I agree. I think that's a beautiful statement. And I think that too often people don't even recognize that's necessary. That you can't expect a teacher to go into that classroom and have amazing time on the mat when they don't feel safe in that environment. Not even necessarily from outside the forces that come in, like, perpetrators, threats, but literally even the administrators in that building and how they treat them can cause a sense of fear and hostility and anxiety on the part of the educator. So I'm so glad that you said it. As a national SEL expert, Corey, and let me share this amazing website for those of you watching, right? There is hardships, and not only does she have the most attractive male models.
Who is that gentleman right there?
Male models on the website, but it's a really great blog included on her consulting page. So if you are a school leader or a district leader and you're looking at who can I contact to learn more about SEL, or who can help me create a framework, who can help me identify and curate and cultivate the best resources, Corey Sanchez Smith, again, is your national leading expert. Now, Corey's website, again, has a blog, has some great articles on the blog. She ain't posting a whole lot, but again, it takes a lot of time to write them. But what's there are some really beautiful, vulnerable posts where she links things in her life to the actual work that she does. It's definitely worth a visit. Corey, this is my next question that I have for you, and it's this. As a leading expert in the field of social and emotional learning, you have seen a lot of great things happen in schools and school systems, and you see some things that were not so great. You've seen SEL done right, and you've maybe seen it done where there was lots of opportunities to grow. What does effective social emotional learning look like in a school?
There's so many different ways that I want to answer that. So let me say that I have not seen a effective social emotional learning implementation yet that didn't have a dedicated and persistent leader who set it as a priority. So in schools that have SEL is something that they are committed to doing. There is a vision for the work. There is a commitment to adult support, whether that is training or resources or just time to collaborate and learn together. There is a clear understanding of where they want to go. So are we trying to encourage more attendance? Are we looking at engagement with our family and communities? Are we trying to increase the rigor through student-led discussions, which is also SEL, like quality education where students are put first? Like there is an aim, there is a vision, there's a measurement, and there is time to do the work correctly. I would be remiss if I didn't say that SEL schools should also have an explicit curriculum. And what that means is there's a time in the day to actually teach the skills of collaboration, problem solving, self-management, and self-awareness that we walk away from the assumption that kids already know these things, that their parents taught these things, which they very well might have, but how we iterate those in a school setting is different from the home. So there's a curriculum, there is time to implement, there's a community of educators that are focused and goal driven, and there's mostly a leader at the top saying, this is what we're doing for kids.
Yeah, I'm still learning those things myself, right? Like I'm just now starting to feel like I'm getting it down, right? Like responsible decision making. I learned that early, but really being able to monitor and manage some of my emotions. Yeah, take some time, right? And it's an ebb, and it's a flow. And you're right, Candy. SEL should be right up there. It's an integral part of what students should engage with, every single day. Here's a great question that we have from Tiffany Franklin. Dr. Franklin says, where do schools find the extra funds they need to truly support this work, especially if the schools don't have it built into their budgets? Because to be fair, unfortunately, a lot of schools are right now prioritizing academic interventions and recovering from what they perceive as lost learning. And they're not using their funds or not able to use their funds to bring in consultants like you to help them create a framework to truly implement SEL, or even get that explicit curriculum down where they really can maximize their class time.
Are you referring to SR2 funds? Is that what you're talking about right now?
Funds in general.
So I will say that there are some schools that have used SR2 funds to fund SEL because it is a line item in that funding source. So right now, more than ever before, federal funds can be used to support SEL in schools. That has never happened before. Also, I'd like to just say that Education First, which is a local organization in Atlanta, Georgia, has a national opening right now for some funding for teachers and for schools that are prioritizing SEL. So I know I put it on my LinkedIn page. Ann Duffy is the person who posted it originally. So Ann Duffy, Education First, Novo Foundation, they have some grants right now to support SEL in terms of teacher support and also student support. Georgia DFACS, for many years, I think we're on our 5th, 6th, 7th year, have offered a grant every single year for explicit SEL curriculum for Georgia schools. And that is open normally January-ish. So it should be now, if not February. I would look to see if they still have that grant availability, because when I was with Atlanta Public Schools, we funded our explicit curriculum in every single elementary, pre-K, and middle school with those state funds. So there is money out there. There are ways to find it. But it takes a priority, right? So schools do have money now to spend on SEL. It needs to be important enough to do that.
And this is a recent repost from the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, and he posted this on Twitter where he literally says, I think this was recent, that these are the priority. This is the top number one things that he would like schools to focus on in this country. And that number one, that they engage families as core partners to educators. Number two is that they address misinstruction through intensive tutoring, extended learning time, and other evidence-based practices. And number three is increase access to social, emotional, and mental supports for all students. So, this is a priority from the Federal Department of Education. So we would think that the funding would be provided or funds would be coming. And I really hope that happens. So, Dr. Franklin, I hope that there will be even more money out there. And hello, Dr. Massey. So glad that you could join us. SEL absolutely does indeed matter. So, Corey, we talked about the things how it looks right. What are some missteps that you've seen in regards to the implementation of SEL?
So a couple things. First would be that there are expectations for the classroom that do not reverberate throughout the school. So we talked earlier about building connections and having time to really see students and to build their capacity. Well, that should be evident in all common areas of the school building. So if we're committed to what's best for students in the classroom, how we interact with them in the hallways, Common areas like the cafeteria and the media center should also reflect that commitment to SEL. That would also be reflective in the discipline policy, right? Like that we are about building up students, not tearing them down. So it's a mistake or a missed opportunity is often stopping the expectation at the classroom door and not really having it throughout the school building and into your community, right? With your commitment to parents. Another error, I would say, is not limited to SEL, but really all school climate initiatives. And that is when the mindset is that we are here to control students, right? Like when we take a framework and wrap it around an old school thought of, because I told you, you should do it. And when we talk about competencies in SEL, like self-management, which has to do with like how I manage my emotions in my body, that could be discovery, where we teach kids different skills and we allow them to pick the one that works for them. In misuse, it becomes a demand, like get yourself together. So definitely understanding at its core what social emotional learning is supposed to do and making sure that we reframe some of our thinking around our relationships with students, that we're in partnership, that it's not a dictatorship, it's not a fiefdom, right? That it becomes a community that works together. And that takes a lot of mental gymnastics for some people.
It takes a lot of unpacking as well. Many, not even many, but I'll say some educators, the ones who I have seen struggle the most with this work, are the ones who are doing to kids what was done to them. Right. Because that is what they know. And they're not at a level of growth where they have unpacked that to realize this may not have been the most effective way to bring in schooling. How do we get educators to recognize that schooling is not like an offshoot of the criminal justice system, where you're not about controlling kids and their behavior. You're not in charge of disciplining them to teach them lessons. Your work is to help them grow and evolve and be the best versions of who they are. How do we get more of that into our schools?
So I lean back onto what I said earlier about a leader who set a vision. So when the school leader says we prioritize student well-being and this is how we're going to do it, and then that school leader leaves it up to grade level communities to figure out what that looks like at their grade, really building in partnership amongst peers to make it happen, then you have this shared, not only vision, but shared accountability. So you're sitting in grade level meetings saying, this is what's happening in my classroom, you're working together as a team. We get a sort of, we have a bigger hurdle moving this work when people are in silos in their own classrooms doing their own thing. So when we have opportunities for people to work together as adults and talk about SEL, I mean, obviously you're talking about your content, you're talking about parent engagement, you're talking about all of your priorities, but you should also be talking about SEL because this is learning for all of us, right? So what mistakes did you make? What lesson really went well, or which one bombed? Like what totally tanked, and how can you learn for those in your cohort about what worked for them? How can we replicate a classroom community with our adult people so that we don't have people defaulting into their old ways of thinking? That we bring it out and say, look, this is who we are now, and let's support each other in moving forward. There is no more, of that. We've got bigger things to do.
So it seems like you got to have the commitment of the building level leader, and that may be the very first level of training, growth, and development in that process to get them to understand before you can really change the hearts and minds of teachers. But here's kind of a flip of it. Let's say I'm a teacher and I get everything that you're saying. Like I immediately, the work of social emotional learning or social emotional learning resonated with me. I've done my own independent research. I've gone to, Heart Shifting Consulting website. I read your blog. I've looked at your resources. I've looked at some things that you've shared on Twitter. I love it. But I am in a building where my leader isn't cultivating the right environment for me to feel safe. And I am working with colleagues who prefer to, they work in silos. That's their survival mechanism. What can I do to still do the right thing for my students in regards to their social and emotional development?
So I have literally had that same conversation. I can't count how many times. So because I do believe that there are more educators who are already doing this and want to do it in a more impactful way in every single school in the United States, like hands down. I believe that. That actually led me to develop my YouTube series, which is specifically for teachers. It came out of teachers saying to me, I just want to learn more and I don't know how. So a series of videos that are geared exactly for educators that want to do deeper work. So that's a resource that's available. I would say that there are times when you have to really focus on what you can control and let go of what you cannot. It's how you survive. Like you will go absolutely bonkers if you try to make other people change. So understanding your control, like your window of control, and doing a really, really good job. I've talked to some educators that were interested in collecting their own data around effectiveness so that they can go to their principal or go to their team and say, look what's happening. And so I've had a number of conversations offline with people saying, hey, these are the implementation points that you can track over time. This is how you can collect from one semester to another, because the last person I talked to was a middle school teacher, and just say, look, do your part. Do what you know is working. Obviously, you listen to your building leader, but in the way that you can implement what's important to you, track it, and then show how your attendance is higher than other teachers. Show how you've been able to grow students at a higher rate. Show how your students are responding on the climate survey in relation to others that are in the same grade level. So collect your own data, hold on to what you can hold on to, let go of the rest, and really just stay true to your heart.
I love it. I think beautiful answer, right? Like, and I was going to say, what are some ways that teachers can integrate SEL into the academic experience? Because that's right now the big thing in the SEL research world. So as I was reading, preparing for this engagement, that's what I saw. That is like the focus. And I was thinking because that was some work that the two of us worked on in Atlanta Public Schools.
Right.
And I want to let me get big to go and do a confessional, right? Like here's real world MTV confessional moment. Corey was a national leading SEL expert, and I didn't even know what SEL was. And she was a director of social and emotional learning. She was a coordinator for it first, and then she became the director for this movement in our school system. And I was the director of curriculum and instruction. And so I was of the mind that nothing mattered but the academics, core academics, because I didn't understand and see the connection until having robust, strong conversation, dialogue, discussions, and debates with Corey, and she helped me shift my paradigm. And once that light came on, it never went off. So my question, Corey, is that now, after giving this full-fledged, confession and omission, to the situation, my question is, now people are still just now getting to this point where they realize that SEL is something that has to happen throughout the course of the full day. It's not just mat time. It's not just the explicit lesson for 10 minutes and then you let it go. That you have to reinforce responsible decision making throughout the course of the day and throughout the academic experience. You have to reinforce how to collaborate and how to work together and how to communicate with peers throughout the course of the day, and how to manage your emotions and how to be in control of yourself. What are 3 ways that teachers can do this in the academic environment? You give me one, I'll give you one. Yeah, it'll be a give and take.
This is what I do, right? So
just lay it out.
Okay, so you want 3. So I'm gonna
you can give me 8. I'm gonna make a nice graphic, throw it out, give me all you got.
I will say that the first thing to do, and this is related to trauma-informed approach. This is related to culturally responsive instruction. It is how it feels to be in your classroom. An SEL classroom is safe and nurturing so that you are not triggering a primitive brain limbic response, right? So how do you make sure that you have set routines and procedures where people know what's expected of them? They don't have things coming out sideways, left and right that put them on the defense. You have created a sense of community where sarcasm is not allowed. We don't tease and make fun of each other, that people feel safe, because I'm not going to be a risk taker with my academics if I feel like I'm going to be teased, right? So how do we create a safe environment where people can stretch and grow? Because real rigorous learning comes from when we make new connections to what we already have. Our brain stretches.
and you take academic risks. That is the optimal environment for true learning to occur, is that you have an environment where you can take you feel safe to take academic risk, and you do it.
Correct. And so if you don't feel safe, you won't. So the first is, how does it feel to be in the classroom? The second would be having high expectations with support. So that we have an epidemic in our schools where brown students and Black students that live in poverty, and students that have a different initial language are exposed to more worksheets and low-level work than others. And that is because we have decided that's what they can do. And so SEL says that you see children in their potential, that you continue to push them for everything that they want to be, and you do that with support. So it's not dangling something out there that they can't do and just let them wither. It's, I have high expectations for you. I know this is something that you're interested in doing, and I'm going to help you get there. So it's high expectations, rigorous, supportive academic push. Another thing that you can do to integrate SEL into academics is to look at what the kids are digesting. So when you bring in videos, when you bring in books, speakers, resources, that what the students have in front of them is reflective of their experience. So I'm a person who has multiple races in my family, and I didn't see a family that looked like mine in my school setting, not on a poster, not on a story, not on a book. And it made me feel like an other in a very big way. I would say that I've talked to teachers that have said their own children don't want to talk about having two moms or two dads because they don't see families that look like theirs. So they feel like they don't belong. How easy would it be to have a more inclusive resource for people so that the students can know that they're important and that they belong there? So you can integrate SEL. It's called social awareness. It's how we allow people to see opportunities or existences or families or beliefs or religions or cultures that are different from them, and to learn from it. So having a really inclusive resource bank for students to enjoy while they're learning is another way.
I think those are three great things. And just to summarize, which I have it down right before I make my infographic, and of course, giving credit to the expert, is that number one, ensure the classroom is safe and nurturing, with routines and procedures with expectations that kids can count on. Number two, that you also have those high expectations for every single child, with supports to ensure that kids can meet those expectations and their support along the way. And number three, that you look at what the kids are actually digesting, in meaning what they like and what resonates with them and what reflects them, so that they can see themselves reflected appropriately in that learning environment. And that seems so easy, but for whatever reason, it's not happening pervasively across the country. As a matter of fact, it seems like the opposite is being encouraged. What can teachers do in this current moment to still stand strong in ensuring that every child feels at least centered in the learning? From your opinion, your opinion.
Let them talk. Let them talk. So instead of doing all the speaking and doing all the examples and answering all the questions, which I'm sure you and I were both guilty of, right? Especially in the beginning of our career, we did all the talking.
Not really, not Corey. Not really. I was pretty good at the throwing it back on the kids, and because I'm so opinionated, I was really cautious. And because of the environment in which I worked, because I was working in a very conservative, wealthy school. So I was extremely cautious to actually share very little of my own opinions, and really force the kids to give me theirs and back it up with whatever support they had. So I was okay with that.
Well, you are better off than me, because I was a teacher who literally held on to the teacher's guide with a claw and read every bold fonted statement, because I was so afraid of letting go. It took a good 3 years for me to say, you know what? I don't have to know all the answers. If they take this conversation in a new place, I'm okay just not knowing and figuring it out later. It took 3 full years before I got to that place. So I would say way to center on students is to center on students. that you start a class with a provocation and you just let them talk. What connections do they see? What opinions do they have? Because that's part of self-awareness. And so SEL is understanding what you stand for, who you are, what is your value system. Our kids today take in so much, right? From social media, from their peers, from the world, and the opportunity to actually stop and reflect and decide, do I like that? Is that who I want to be? Is this a cause that I can stand behind? Do I want to be this person? Like, the time to actually have that thought is often not given. So let's give it to them. Let's sit in it and let them struggle with making their own connections so that they leave us as a person who can communicate who they are and what they want.
Absolutely. I think that is you're so beautifully articulate when it comes to this work. And that's why I knew this conversation would be so powerful, because the way you speak about SEL and the way you talk about it, it makes it real. You're taking what is an easy enough concept that really is a complicated concept and making it seem so relatable and so easy, so achievable, and so doable. You spoke earlier in our conversation, Corey, about how schools of education don't teach this. Should schools of education teach this, and at what point in that process should they address it, if so?
I will say that more schools now. So my comment was really about like teachers of my generation and before, where it wasn't part of our learning curve. I know that there are a couple universities I'm aware of that have started to put in courses around social emotional learning, which is great. And yes, they absolutely should prioritize it as part of the teacher preparation program, because whatever the difference is in terms of like state standards and all the things that we focus on, the one thing that is consistent is that we're in front of human beings that need our help being better human beings.
Every single day.
Every single day.
All of us, right? We're all on a journey to grow. And again, these concepts help all of us when they can be addressed. If you had a magic $1.9 trillion budget to give to all the school systems in the United States of America to address the social and emotional needs of students, how would you dictate that money be spent?
Wow, that's a hard question.
1.9 trillion, baby.
I would prioritize healthcare. I've had students that literally had teeth rotting in their mouth, and students that couldn't see because they couldn't afford glasses, and students that were hungry. And that was all in my first year of teaching, and every year after that, right? But I remember being stuck with, how dare I ask anything of them, right? These kids, these fifth graders that were just trying to hold on to whatever health they could. So I would make sure that no student was hurting and that they could be a happy person entering school. We could do more with that. I'm not saying that schools need to have that responsibility, but I think as people, as a nation, we should prioritize our children in that way. So I would definitely look at health first. The next, I would look at really breaking up what we've held on to that's really outdated. I'm talking about like the hours we're in school, the length of our school year. I would pay teachers more and have more school days, because I started off in a year-round school and I loved it. After those 6 weeks, I needed to be by myself for a little bit, right? And so it was a break that was well needed, and they came often. So I like the model of stretching out the year. I also like looking at time in a different way, because we know that the adolescent brain wakes up at different times than adult brain. And so having class at 7:30 makes sense to nobody, right? So let's reimagine like what school could look like and what supports are needed, so that if parents need to go to work, we have care on campus, and that we start school at a time that's normal, and we end school and we feed kids, and we pay teachers more, and we, as part of the school year, prioritize growth and development, that we have funds that interested teachers that want to continue to learn and grow can do that. that they can go on sabbatical to other countries and see what things are like there, that they can dive deep into their content, I really believe that if we invest in whole, happy, healthy adults, we will work together to support whole, happy, healthy children. And so I would replicate for the teachers what I want the students to experience.
That's a beautiful picture, actually, of how to improve American education. I think I think it's beautiful, and I guess the only pushback would be, I would use that money to bring in more support personnel that are also paid like a strong professional wage to assist in some of those pieces. That would be my only caveat. Only thing to add in is that you have people at every grade level, maybe even every classroom, to assist in some of that lift, so that teachers really can be free to have balance and manage expectations. I do agree with having schools open earlier for kids to come, stay later for kids as well, but having the start time be more appropriate to what is developmentally right for children. And in that process, again, you can literally have shifts, and teachers themselves can even pick when it would be appropriate for them to work based upon what their schedules will be, their family schedules. Like, right, a young mom and dad may want to start earlier in the day, whereas someone with like grown kids or teenagers may want to also start with their kids later in the day. And I think that would be a beautiful thing to be able to bring to the table and do. And I also agree that teachers should be able to have their professional growth as they want to grow, not what administrators dictate to them, but what they want. So if that includes a sabbatical and traveling to Spain because that is their interest, I think money should be there. I don't know if we'll ever get that in public education, but maybe, Corey, one day we'll open our own school.
You said that.
And not a charter school, because but maybe a private school that would be free for students, and we find other ways of funding that cost, so that we can do some of that good stuff that we really, really want to do. Corey, why SEL? Why is this your passion? Why do you do this? Why has this been, like, literally, this is your career? You have made a whole career. You've established and emerged as a national expert with tons of training from CASEL, tons of certification around this topic. Why SEL for you? With all the training you have, all the knowledge and experience, why SEL?
So I think you've heard the story before, so sorry in advance. So I was teaching right out of college. I was a ripe 21-year-old, and I was in a class of students that I adored and loved, and I had absolutely no idea how to take care of them because their issues were bigger than what I was trained to do. And I remember sitting in the counselor's office almost every day. Anna Rojas was her name. And just asking her about my kids and what I could do to help them. I had a mom call me one night. This is my second year teaching, crying because her husband had just died. He had a heart attack. This is a man who just volunteered in my class the night before or the day before. And in her tears, she gives the phone to her son, who is my student. And her expectation that I comfort him was overwhelming because I didn't know what to say. And I just cried on the phone. I didn't know how to help. And I just realized I was not prepared for the life that my students had. I just didn't know what to do. It was the most disarming and uncomfortable I'd ever been. And so I decided to get my degree in counseling, not to be a counselor. I've never worked as a counselor. I respect counselors. I went and spent 2 years in grad school and learned all about human affective behavior because I just wanted to be a better teacher. I just knew that there was something that I needed to do my job. And I did. I taught all through grad school, and I stayed as a teacher after grad school. And that education was everything for me. I was able to see my students in a different way. I was definitely able to support them. I was able to reach out to social workers and counselors when it was just too big for me, and I knew that I needed their help. And I don't know that I would have before. I think I had the belief that I needed to handle it all. So I started working as a community member with a community for my kids. And I realized once I found out what SEL was, that was what I was missing. That I naturally forced myself into learning to land where I am now. So for me, social emotional learning is the entity that is most important to me when it comes to meeting the needs of students. And I'm committed to helping as many people as possible make this happen.
That's a beautiful testimony. And no, Corey, you had never told me that story. Never told me, and I think it's a beautiful. I think it's who you are. Like that's the Corey Sanchez Smith that I've always known. So it's really refreshing to know that you've always been like this. Like you've always been like this. The Corey I know and worked with and love, where I would literally walk past your cubicle and you'd be just bawling in tears, having watched some video from like some motivational soul pancake and.
Soul pancake.
So I thought that. So again, it's really refreshing. Again, you are the authentic Corey that you are. One thing that we always do, as we are now in the final 15 minutes of our discussion, is we're going to have some questions for you as well as our viewers. And so viewers, if you have questions for Corey, please ask those questions now, and be prepared to engage with us in the questioning round that I'm going to ask Corey, where it kind of goes beyond just SEL into education in general. But before we do that, I always give you the chance, Corey, to now ask me a question, whatever it is, because you've been doing my questioning, and whatever you want to know, you get to go.
I get to go with no preparation?
You can ask me any question. Well, I get no preparation because, like, you didn't have any either, right? So
yes. Okay. So, Zach, I would say when you think about the impact you want to have through your multiple channels and the people that follow, love you, and want to learn more from you, what is your goal? What do you want to accomplish?
my goal is, I think, pretty simple. My goal is to ensure that people realize that they can make a difference, and that a difference can be made at a micro level. And the majority of us are actually called to make small differences every single day by taking action and by being our authentic selves and by showing up and by truly impacting the lives of other people. I firmly believe, and this is my true philosophy, at this stage in my life, that there are some people that are called to have a huge impact in the world. And that impact can be good or bad. It could be Donald Trump. It could be Joe Biden. It could be either of those, and however you view them. But they have had a macro influence in the world and how the world is at this moment. But we can have the same level of impact on a person's life. And that is something that great educators, or even good educators, have always known. And that's what we do, is that we're given a group of students in a given year, and we try to impact their lives to the best of our abilities and help them gain the skills, the knowledge that they need to lead choice-filled lives when they leave our classrooms. But that doesn't just stop for teachers or for children in the school environment. It continues for the rest of our lives. So I am here on these platforms hoping to empower adults and people that see it, whoever it's meant to connect with, that they too need to take action and have a micro influence to make this world a better place. Because if we don't do it, it's not going to get done. And this is an urgent time, I feel, in American life.
Well, thank you.
That's why I'm here, and why I'm doing this. So with that being said, Corey, and for all of our viewers and people watching, there are a number of trends that have taken shape over the course of both of our careers and over the course of your lives if you're not an educator. What has been the best trend that you've seen in education and the worst trend that you've seen in education?
So I love project-based learning. When I started at Eastlake Elementary, it was a Connect school at that point. And I remember skipping to the building over the summer to meet with my colleague to develop these lessons, these units. And I had such a sense of autonomy and advocacy and interest, and just it belonged to us. And I was so invested in the learning in that way. It was transdisciplinary. It was exciting. I brought more to the lessons because I knew it so well, and I wanted the kids to love it as much as I did. And I worked in, partnership with another person to make it happen. And I did my best teaching. I didn't have to get paid. I just loved doing it. Project-based learning, interdisciplinary learning, whatever the format is, it just teachers being able to do their best work and develop it themselves. That was my best. That was the best year. Those were the best years.
The worst trend. And why do you think I'll share, my best trend, I'll share my worst trend first. I'll go backwards because that's immediately in my mind. When you say project-based learning, would I say project-based learning is my worst trend? Absolutely not. But what I would say is a one-size-fits-all answer that you must do is my worst trend. So an example, we have whole language rolling out when I was an elementary school student. So all phonics instruction has to go because whole language is the answer. There is no other way. Every child will learn best by whole language. Then now we have the flip. We're bringing back, or it comes back where you have to have the phonics and phonemic awareness. And now whole language is horrible. There are elements of everything that is good for someone. And I think that teachers deserve their ability to decide for their children what will work for that child. And they need to have a variety of things in their toolbox that they can pull from. Project-based learning is so effective for some teachers and some students, but not for all. And that to me is the worst trend, is that we try to make everybody fit into the all box when that's really not how it works, because that's not human nature.
Yeah, I can see that. What I liked about project-based learning is that it was open.
Yeah.
When you're working on a project, it's not a multiple choice quiz. There's not one answer. There's all these different ways to express your learning. And so what you're saying about teachers, I think that was true for students. The worst trend for me, someone who went to East Lake. I was there. Someone who went, the worst trend I believe would be quantifying behavior, like the class dojo point thing. Sorry, I probably shouldn't name like a company. I apologize. But when we start putting points on people, it absolutely rips my soul out of my body. I think it is the worst.
It is. And that's so old, even beyond the color coding, right? Where you put a kid on a certain color and then if I am being a little squirrely today, or because I always talk too much, and you give me yellow, you're going to make me even angrier because I'm yellow.
Red and it's 8:45.
Just go ahead and just call a day a done deal. It's over. And the same thing goes these poorly coded code names and for the groups, all of that. I agree with you. Where you're quantifying kids and quantifying behavior is absolutely a horrible trend. I will say that the best trend that I have seen come through in education really is a blend of social emotional learning and personalization. That's the whole element to let's personalize what we do so that every child has his or her needs met and they have a voice in the process. That is, I don't think it's a trend. I think it's the way education should be. But if you consider the trend, I would say that to me, hands down, is the most effective thing that I've seen. Because again, it's the exact opposite of the one size fits all that we know has never worked. Every child is an individual and has a right to be seen as an individual and should be catered to like an individual. That is a lot easier to do than what I think it may sound like when you really get down to it. If the teacher has the skills to do it, or I would say, the skills. And a lot of those skills can be gained through SEL. We haven't talked about adult SEL, Corey. What is meant by that term, adult SEL?
That's actually a great question. So I know that people look at that differently. The truth is SEL is SEL. There's no different adult or student SEL. It's how we as human beings navigate this world and what we want and who we are. But I know that people use the term to indicate a priority. So when people say we're doing adult SEL, it means that they are putting effort and intention behind making sure the adults in the building are working through their own competencies. So it's not just an approach of, hey, do this for the kids, but it's let's do this for you. So it's opportunities around mindfulness. There's all of this data around the impact on teachers that have a mindful practice, that they are more effective in their teaching, that they report less burnout, and that they're able to really inspire more because they're able to see empathy in others and really calm their own emotions enough to engage in a new way. So a priority around adult SEL would be giving teachers the skills to grow so that they can, like this person's saying, model for students so that they're there for the students in a different way.
Yeah, and I love Annette says model, model, model. If we want to see teachers give students more autonomy, then leaders need to give teachers more autonomy. If we want to see students feel empowered and have voice and choice in their experiences, then we need to make sure that teachers have the same level of autonomy and model for them what we want to see in their classrooms, which has always been, I think, maybe a piece that has been somewhat missing. Now, the next question, again, nobody watching shared, to the last question about the best trend, the worst trend. My next question is this: what is, if you could pick one trait, Corey, that you value the most in a teacher, what would that one trait be?
I know exactly what it is, because when I used to observe teachers, I was trying to figure out like what made someone awesome. And it was the ability to read students and shift in the middle of a lesson. Like when you're teaching and you have your 4 pages typed up and you think you know what you're doing, but it is bombing. Like it is crashing mid-frame. You are so in tune with where your kids are, and you are aware of your ability to do better, and you're not so stuck on your way that you have to stay with it, that you will change, you will do what you need to meet your kids. I have seen it happen with first year teachers, I've seen it happen with veteran teachers, and it makes all the difference. Those who can read the room, change, and keep going. Yes. You know what, I think that for me, the trait that I think that stands out, you did a great job. I love that. I think that is a masterful part of being a good teacher. It would be for me like the ability to just truly be authentic, like just be yourself in that classroom, whoever that self may be. It doesn't, like I think I said earlier, you don't have to be charismatic, extroverted, outgoing. You don't have to be into that. You just be yourself. And children are real enough and they have enough wherewithal to recognize that, and just the authentic nature of you being you, they will love it. You don't have to be like any other teacher. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else. You don't have to do any of that. Just be you and be good as the you that you are. And that would be, those teachers to me are my favorites for me. And you can always tell because they are able to share, they are vulnerable, and they build relationships with their kids that are real based on who they are. And, I've always been amazed. It was always amazing to me how kids would love a certain teacher who was so totally unlike anybody I would ever want to love. But I understand that, again, they have there were teachers who had no interest in like relationships with their peers. That's not why they were coming to work. And I, now as an adult, a grown up, not a 21-year-old new teacher, I understand and appreciate that. So, and I realized what it was, that they were creating relationships with their kids. And that's what the focus was. And that's what the work was. And they had, a lot of great success. So that would be for me, I guess, the number one. Yeah, story. I've seen that be overplayed.
Really?
I've seen teachers who are so into being friends with the students that they're, and I'm just keeping it real, and I'm. Yeah, I don't
like that. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying be authentically you. But I'm not saying be friends with kids, because kids don't want to be friends with adults.
Well, that's the problem. Zach, people can say I'm being real and then leave the teaching behind, right? Like, I've seen it happen. Like they just. No,
I know. I know what you're talking about. I agree. Don't be friends. If you're a teacher out there, don't be friends with kids. Be your kid's teacher. Kids have enough friends. They have all the friends they need. You're not their friend. You're not their mama. You're not their daddy. You're their teacher. Be that teacher. And be that teacher for the rest of your life. It's who you are, right? Like that's a boundary. That's a world. That's like a relationship that you honor. And, I just recently had some former students even, come over. I had a situation, I had family tragedy. I think it's not a secret. And anyone watching, me, that I had family tragedy. So the graduating class of 2005, one of my former students she's a teacher now. She's a dental teacher in Fayette. And she was in 05 graduated with Candace Dillard-Bissett from the Real Houses of Potomac, Ebony and Charmaine. The four of them went in together and they brought me this beautiful quilt that they made of my mom and my niece. And it's just a beautiful keepsake and artifact. And they brought it over on Saturday, and we had a great conversation. And we're friends, but we're still, those are my students. I was their teacher, and that's what we were. And I don't think anybody wants anything different. So
I'm so happy you have that.
I am too. But we all do, right? That is the power for anyone out there, and is especially in these hard times. And you're thinking about, entering the field of education, but you're seeing all the negative things out there. Yeah, it's always been negative. It's always been hard. It's always been a sacrifice. But the rewards, when you do this right, they last a lifetime. The best years of my life were the brokest years of my life as an adult, but they were in the classroom, and it was a wonderful experience. Corey, this has been a wonderful experience. I appreciate you, and I thank you for taking the time so much so I even, did my hair just like yours. So everyone, I love you, Corey. Thank you for joining us. This has been a pleasure. We're at our hour. Join us back next week when we're going to have a panel discussion around whether or not you should explore leadership in education as an instructional coach or an assistant principal.
Thank you, Zach.
Love you. Don't log off.